Hello my friends, and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate 3 character building guide. Hope you're all doing well. I've had a little bit of time to play with the new subclasses from the patch 8 playtest, and I'm super excited to be diving into building with the new and cool characters. Today, we're going to be starting with a build that I have been having an absolute blast with, which I am calling the Glamour Commander. This build will do excellent damage every single turn of combat, and once per day can just win a combat outright by causing your enemies to grovel before you. You also have excellent utility for your party, very solid control spells throughout the entire game, great skills, and everything that your party leader needs in order to run away with an honor mode run. Because the patch 8 content is still in playtest and is being changed frequently, we don't know what the final balancing of the content will be. So for that reason, I'm going to be focusing these builds on doing really awesome, fun stuff with the new mechanics, rather than being strictly as powerful as possible. This build, of course, is still extremely strong, but mostly we're trying to just have a blast and do awesome things, no pun intended, as you'll see shortly. And this build does so better, in my opinion, than pretty much any other. It's just an incredibly fun time to actually play this character. Before I begin, I do want to take a quick moment to say thank you so much to Zazu Leet for the €20 donation, Michael Piccone for the $5, AAR21 for the $5, and Mr. Cadram and Demon Captrix for becoming channel members. Thank you so much, my friends. I really appreciate the support. It really means a lot. I'm very behind on saying thank you to everyone, but I will get there, and I really, really appreciate the support. All right, let's get building. I'm using Wyll here as the example character because this build does use levels of Warlock, although we're taking more levels in other classes. But as a dashing sword fighter, party leader with command of both allies and enemies, this build I think fits his character extremely well. If you're building this as a custom character, then I recommend taking Drow or Half-Drow for your race. This will get you an extra cast of Darkness once per day, which is very helpful for this build. Like every other Warlock build, this build can thrive in Darkness and make extremely good use of the Darkness abuse available in Baldur's Gate 3, so extra casts of that, especially because we won't necessarily be getting casts of Darkness with our actual spells and instead relying on items for it, will be very, very helpful for this character build. Other great options, of course, are the normal standouts like Halfling for the ability to reroll ones, especially helpful because we're going to get a lot of critical hits with this build, so that just makes those even more likely, or Wood Elf or Half Wood Elf for the additional movement speed. We're going to start this build at first level with a level of Warlock. However, what Warlock subclass we take at this point is completely open to your choice. All 4 of the Warlock subclasses are very, very viable for this build. With the Archfey Warlock, you get the ability to charm enemies, which will make our Glamour Bard ability have no saving throw, so you'll be guaranteed to succeed on commanding enemies if you hit them with Archfey Warlock Charm, so it's very synergistic there. Fiend Warlock gets additional casts of Command, so for this character that wants to cast Command a lot, that's very thematic. And that's also just an extremely powerful spell for every spellcaster to have, so that's a great option also. Great Old One Warlock gets free crowd control whenever you land a critical hit with an Eldritch Blast, which this character is going to be doing a lot of, and Hexblade Warlock gets the best sustained damage as well as defensive abilities with better weapon proficiencies and armor, shield proficiency, and the shield spell, as well as the best sustained damage output with Hexblade's Curse, which this build also uses even better than most other builds. Since we want to show off the new stuff, and I think it's also probably the most powerful overall, we're going to start this build, this example build, with a level of Hexblade, but I wanted to mention that all 4 of the Warlock subclasses are viable for this build. So we're going to start off with Hexblade. Get used to hearing me say that for a while. This is such a powerful dip for pretty much every build. Hexblade Warlock is going to show up a lot because this class is so incredibly good. For our cantrip selection for this character, we're going to be taking Eldritch Blast, because of course we are a Warlock, and every Warlock should take Eldritch Blast. This character will be using this as our primary damage source throughout the game, because of just how efficient it's going to be once we have all of our Warlock abilities online in combination with the other things that we're doing. And for our second cantrip, we're going to take Booming Blade. Since we're a Hexblade Warlock, we can bind a packed weapon and attack in melee. Booming Blade plus a solid weapon with any hexed weapon is going to be a ton of damage, and that lets us attack with our charisma as well because of how Hexblade Warlock works. So adding in Booming Blade can be a huge burst of damage if enemies get into melee and gives us a great option. Our primary strategy with this character will be ranged combat and spell casting, so you're going to use Eldritch Blast and our spells more often than you use Booming Blade, but this ability is so strong and works so well for this character that it would be foolish to leave without this option. Just to quickly remind you, since it's a new subclass, what Hexblade Warlock does is you get to bind a hexed weapon, which can then use your charisma modifier to attack with, just like Pact of the Blade Warlock, but 2 levels earlier. And also you get Hexblade's Curse as a bonus action, which lets you, once per short rest, do additional damage to an enemy with every single damage roll that you do against them. This works with every individual beam of Eldritch Blast, so with Hexblade's Curse, you get an extra 2 damage to start with that goes up to 4 damage by the time you've hit level 12, so your Eldritch Blasts are going to hit really hard. You can add even more of that with Hex, and we're going to be able to apply both of them in the same turn with this build for really, really powerful Eldritch Blasts. So Hexblade gives us great sustained damage throughout the game, as well as powerful defensive capabilities, much, much better gear access, and a lot more besides. For our spell selection, we're going to be taking Shield, and we're not going to take Wrathful Smite, the other unique spell available to Hexblade Warlock. Instead, we're going to take Hex. Getting Shield from a Warlock spell slot is great, because once per short rest or twice per short rest, being able to just spend a Warlock spell slot on shielding is really helpful. This character wants to maintain concentration on either its spells, its hexes, or its Mantle of Majesty later on, and Shield is extremely useful for that because it reduces the amount of damage you take dramatically. Hex, of course, is great for any Eldritch Blast-focused build, which we are, so we're just going to do a ton of damage when we cast Hex. We obviously want to grab that early on as well. For our ability score selection, we actually have another choice at this point. This build can make great use of Ethel's Hair, because we only get 2 feats as we're building the character. So if we're using Ethel's Hair, then we want to take 17 Charisma, 16 Dexterity, 14 Constitution, and 10 Wisdom in order to hit 18 Charisma with the hair, and then be able to hit 20 Charisma later on. We don't have to use it, though. We can take 16 Charisma and boost our Wisdom save by a little bit more as well. I'm going to show you the Ethel's Hair version of the build, because I think this is one of the characters that's absolutely best to use it. But, of course, you don't have to build with 17 Charisma, and can just take the additional ability score improvement to boost your charisma up to 20. For our skill selection, we just want to make sure that we have as many dialogue skills as possible. This character is going to be the party face, so you should take all of these dialogue skills. Taking the guild artisan background can get you insight as well. And that will allow this character to act as the true commander of your party, causing your enemies to kneel before you and bolstering your allies to victory. That's all that we have to do at level 1, so let's move on to level 2. At character level 2, we are taking our second level of Warlock. You could delay this, but I like just having the sustained damage that this character gets from Warlock level 2 with Agonizing Blast as early as possible. Also gets you an extra spell, which is spell known, which is pretty nice, can help keep you alive, because the spell that we're going to select is Armor of Agathis. Now, right now in the patch 8 beta, Warlock level 2 is bugged and is giving you 2 spells known. This should only be 1 spell known, so if you're playing in the beta, then you can just grab whatever spell you want here. Maybe Hellish Rebuke could be kind of fun to give you a viable reaction that you can use early on if you do get hit, even through shield. But typically you're only going, once they fix that bug, you're only going to get 1 spell node, so you'll just take Armor of Agathis at this level. The great defensive spell, it also lets you convert a short rest resource, a Warlock spell slot, into a long rest benefit, 5 temporary hit points, and some returning cold damage. For our Eldritch Invocations, we're of course taking Agonizing Blast to make our Eldritch Blasts more effective, and that will increase our damage a lot, and Devil's Sight. Even though this character is not going to take more levels in Warlock and won't natively be able to cast Darkness, there's lots of ways to produce Darkness through items like Arrows of Darkness, Scrolls, and other items that can create darkness, Devil's Sight is just too broken an ability to leave at home. If you know absolutely that you don't want to do darkness abuse with this character, then Repelling Blast is also a great option, which gives you a lot more control over the battlefield. But if you have any way to produce darkness in your party, you should just take Devil's Sight because of just how powerful that ability is. At character level 3, we're going to start taking levels in Bard. This will increase our versatility dramatically and give us a lot more longevity as well because of Song of Rest, as well as unlocking the powerful combo that we're going to use to win one fight every day, making the character more powerful overall. When we take our level in Bard, we get access to 2 new cantrips, and because we got our combat cantrips, Booming Blade and Eldritch Blast from Warlock, from Bard, we can take utility cantrips. We can grab Friends to be a better party face, and we can take Minor Illusion to be able to pull enemies away from their allies or into groups before combats begin, in order to pick them off one at a time stealthily, or group them up for a gigantic AoE effect. This character has a lot of AoE control spells, so just Minor Illusioning a bunch of enemies together and then dropping a big AoE control spell on top of them is an extremely powerful strategy. Of course, you can also use it with damaging spells from your allies. For our spell selection at this level, we are going to pick up Tasha's Hideous Laughter. This is a good, another solid control spell. Its concentration works very well, disables an enemy. If you have command from Fiend Warlock, so if you took Fiend Warlock as your first level, you probably don't need Tasha's as much, but it's still very useful. And Dissonant Whispers, which is just a great combat spell that can lock down enemies in place without a concentration save. A Dissonant Whispers that just keeps enemies motionless, and then you pick away at them with Eldritch Blasts. Very, very powerful effect, so it's a great combat spell, even if you get it at a slightly later level. We'll take Healing Word to be able to pick up our allies if they get downed or provide healing to them, because this character can also be a great support. And Longstrider if you don't have it elsewhere in your party, to make sure that you have additional movement speed on every character in your party. Otherwise, you can just grab a utility spell like Disguise Self or Speak with Animals if you've got Longstrider on a different party member. We also get an additional skill, and if you don't have a lockpicker in your party, this character can do that, so we can just pick up Sleight of Hand as our skill known in order to have this character also be able to lockpick in addition to everything else, so we get all of our utility in a single character, or you can just take whatever seems fun to you, sort of for flavor reasons, or performance if you feel like you can't have a bard that doesn't have proficiency in performance. Since we took a level in Bard, of course, we need to make absolutely sure that we pick the right instrument, otherwise we're going to totally ruin the build entirely, and then let's move on to level 4. At level 4, taking our second level of Bard, which gets a Song of Rest. Obviously this works well with our Warlock spell slots, because those refresh on a short rest, as well as our Hexblade's Curse ability, which is also a short rest cooldown, so we can use that more frequently in a given day. For our spell selection at this level, you should pretty much be able to grab whatever utility spell you want. This spell is less impactful than the other spells known that we have, because we've already got all the best spells, so if there's anything that you think your party is missing, you can pick it up at this level. A good default is just to take Thunder Wave, because if a bunch of enemies get on top of you, you can use this in an emergency to buy yourself some space before running away. At level 5, we're going to continue to take additional levels in Bard, and we're going to take the College of Glamour Bard. Glamour Bard lets us defend our allies by giving us the Mantle of Inspiration ability that gives us a boost to our allies' hit points, and when an enemy hits with that ally with a melee attack, they become charmed. There's no saving throw on this, and importantly, the charm effect counts as coming from that ally. Charmed means that the enemy can't attack that creature. It can't attack the creature that it's charmed by. And that can be really obnoxious for enemies to deal with, especially enemies that have multi-attack combos, multiple actions in a turn, and things like that. If they hit one of your allies and then become unable to attack them, they'll often have to just waste the rest of their turn. So you gain a lot of value by just having Mantle of Inspiration on 2 allies, your frontliners, at all times. That's going to turn off enemy turns very frequently, causing them to skip actions, causing them to do weird things. Charming allies is also very, very important for College of Glamour's second ability. But Mantle of Inspiration, I think this ability, for some reason, people seem not to value it very highly. I think because charm, actually spending an action on charming an enemy is typically pretty weak in Baldur's Gate 3, but getting it for free on something that you can set up in advance is very nice. So, Mantle of Inspiration, very helpful for defending your allies, and a great use for our bonus action while we're Eldritch Blasting or casting our spells. For our spell selection at this level, I'm going to recommend taking Cloud of Daggers, just a great combat spell. It's a good thing to concentrate on if you don't want to concentrate on Hex, and will continue to just provide great damage output at even a level or two late because of just how powerful this spell is. We can also replace a spell. If we want something like Enhanceability, you can replace one of your lower level spells, and I'm going to recommend doing that just to make sure that your character has even more utility. You could also grab Crown of Madness, Command, or Heat Metal, or Hold Person in order to fulfill the role of crowd controlling enemies even more powerfully than you were doing so before. Finally, we do get one extra skill at this level, or we get skill expertise at this level, and you can put that into Persuasion and Sleight of Hand and have this character be both an incredible party face with expertise in Persuasion and an incredible lockpicker with expertise in Sleight of Hand, so you can cover all of the utility that your party needs in a single character. At Bard level 4, we get our first feat, and the feat that I'm going to recommend taking is, of course, as almost always for Honor Mode, Alert. By this point, if you're going the Ethel's Hair build, you should have 18 Charisma, because you should have been able to boost your Charisma up to 18 by this level. Even if not, you probably still just want to take Alert anyways, because going first is so incredibly valuable in Honor Mode, especially for a character like this that's built around constant damage output, so the more turns you get, the faster you kill enemies, and crowd control, so the sooner you go, the less turns enemies receive, since they're going to be lying on the ground, moaning, and waiting for you to defeat them with your Eldritch Blasts. So Alert, as always, the best pick here. For our cantrip selection, we're going to take True Strike to annoy people in the YouTube comments, which works 100% of the time. And for our spell selection at this level, we're going to grab Hold Person or another valuable crowd control spell, like Heat Metal is also very good for disarming enemies. I like Hold Person because it's just the most debilitating crowd control effect, so if you have a good chance of landing it on an enemy, it's the best thing that you can do with a given spell. We can also cast it on 2 enemies with higher level spell slots later on. Level 5, we get Font of Inspiration and Improved Bardic Inspiration. Bard level 5, we get these abilities, which of course let us use our Mantle of Inspiration even more frequently, so our allies are much healthier than most parties because we're constantly passing out temporary hit points. And enemies that hit them are constantly getting charmed, so we are really disruptive to our enemies' plans and can keep that up all day, especially because we have additional short rests from Song of Rest. We also get 3rd level spells, and there's 2 3rd level spells that I recommend getting, so we're going to replace a lower level spell. The first of these is Hypnotic Pattern. It's just the best control spell in the game overall. It's AoE. It does require your concentration, which this build does have a lot of competing concentration requirements. We want Hex for damage. We're going to want to concentrate on Mantle of Majesty. But concentration, having lots of different concentration options is something that people like to avoid more than they should in builds. The important thing in a fight is that you're concentrating on the best spell. Spellcasters are all about casting whatever spell is 10 out of 10 for that fight, so you're much better having a few different concentration options to make sure that you're spending your concentration in the most valuable way every time, rather than spending those spell slots on non-concentration spells that might be less impactful. So Hypnotic Pattern, just the best spell in a lot of fights, so we definitely want to bring it. However, we do want a non-concentration combat option, so we're going to drop one of these lower level concentration spells, like Hold Person or Tasha's in this case, and we are going to pick up a combat spell, which is going to be Glyph of Warding. Since we will often be concentrating on Hex or on Mantle of Majesty, Glyph of Warding gives us an amazing AoE, non-concentration control and damage spell, and it's just an amazing combat spell for this character to have. can knock enemies prone, deal double damage if you hit them with the wet condition and use the cold version of the spell. You can put them to sleep. Glyph of Warding is incredibly versatile and incredibly powerful, and that's one of the things that really helps with this build, is having a lot of options. We always can make the best choice in any given combat because the character's so versatile. Glyph of Warding goes with that theme by being such a versatile spell, as well as, of course, very, very powerful. So we want to grab that and Hypnotic Pattern as soon as we can. And then at Bard level 6, we get our Mantle of Majesty ability. Mantle of Majesty lets you concentrate for 10 turns on an ability that lets you bonus action cast Command. So, with this character, we can concentrate on it as a bonus action, cast Command. Enemies will automatically fail the saving throw if they're charmed, which a lot of the time they will be because we're passing out Mantle of Inspiration. And if you are just commanding an enemy to lose its turn every turn, you're going to win that fight. Now, it is on a long rest cooldown, so you only have this ability one fight per day, but that lets you save your other resources for that fight. Mantle of Majesty is enough to win a fight on its own, so even though it's on a long rest cooldown, it actually increases your party's adventuring longevity, because in one fight you just have this incredibly powerful ability that stops you from having to spend other resources in order to win it. A bonus action command while you're concentrating on this, and then you can cast Glyphs of Warding, or more frequently just Eldritch Blasts in order to do a bunch of damage, is a very, very powerful tool and enough to win a lot of fights, especially when we double up on it, or even triple up on it, later on with additional class levels and with itemization. We also get a spell at this level, and at this point you should have a good sense of what kind of utility spells your character needs. Oh, did I not? I guess I didn't confirm replacing the spell. So we should have Glyph of Warding already, but we should grab that. And then we can go back and replace a spell for any other utility spells if there are any of these spells that you aren't currently using. This is a good default spell list that will be very useful to you, but if there's any utility spells that you need because your party is missing them, then you can pick them up at this level. This spell slot's pretty open. Another good option is Plant Growth, which is another non-concentration control spell that gives you even more optionality in combat by slowing down melee enemies, though I will say this build is already crushingly hard for melee enemies because they're constantly getting charmed whenever they hit something, so they're much less effective than ranged enemies against you, so Plant Growth is less useful than normal since the threats that it's good against are already not really threats if this character is in your party. But what's better than a bonus action command every turn to dominate one fight every long rest? 2 bonus action commands every turn to dominate a fight every long rest. When you have Mantle of Majesty, if you have additional bonus actions, you can cast Command another time. So we're going to get a second bonus action by taking levels in Rogue in order to double cast Command. The great thing about the second bonus action is that it will also let us both Hex and Hexblade's Curse in the same turn, so that we can do even more damage with our Eldritch Blasts as well. So we're going to take levels in Rogue to make that happen. Rogue also gives us expertise in 2 more skills and another skill known, so we can get expertise in something like Stealth, or in something like Insight to be even better at dialogue checks. This character actually makes a great stealth character because we do ranged damage, so we can play from stealth, set up our commands on key enemies and stuff like that, or our crowd control effects on key enemies. So stealth is very helpful, or we can just be even better at utility for our party and bring our already extremely high utility even higher with expertise in even more of the dialogue skills. Character level 10. We get second level Rogue and get Cunning Action, Dash, Hide, and Disengage, which makes this character even safer, especially once we get our extra bonus action next level. That means that we will always be able to position wherever we want on a battlefield, run away from enemies. If the fight is turning against us, we can just use our movement speed to get the heck out of there. So, sometimes you command from the front, sometimes you command from the back while you're running away, and these cunning actions give us way more utility in mobility in combat, always an incredibly strong ability for any character, this one included. And at level 11, we get to take our third rogue level, picking up our subclass, which of course is going to be Thief Rogue, for the additional bonus action. This lets us cast multiple commands in a single turn, as well as casting both Hexblade's Curse and Hex in a single round before firing Eldritch Blast, so we get the +9 damage that we're doing on each Eldritch Blast beam right from the start of every combat. So very useful for this character. Also, of course, just gives us a ton of mobility and utility. We can drink potions, we can do whatever with these bonus actions. Everyone knows at this point just how good Thief Rogue is, and this character makes use of it even better because of the broken combo with Mantle of Majesty. At character level 12, we're going to just take our 4th level of Rogue to get a second feat, and with that feat, we're going to take an ability improvement to max out our Charisma. Remember, of course, we have Ethel's Hair, so this 19 Charisma is going to be 20 in-game, or 18 if you didn't use Ethel's Hair, in which case you'll want to use Charisma Increasing Gear to boost your Charisma up to 20 or 22. Another option, if you're using Charisma Boosting Gear, is to take instead a 7th level of Bard to get 4th level spells, or a 3rd level of Warlock in order to get 2nd level Warlock spells, which refresh on a short rest, as well as casts of Darkness, so that this character can abuse Darkness. Either of those are great options, but the best default option is just to make sure that our Charisma is as high as possible to increase our damage with Eldritch Blast, our hit chance, and our save DCs. That's it for the build, but of course we can improve it even further with weapons and items, so let's talk about those. For items for this character, we actually have a ton of great item options that can improve this character's power level dramatically. Of course, we're an Eldritch Blast build first and foremost, so best in slot for any Eldritch Blast build is going to be the Potent Robe. This will give us additional temp HP and also just double our Charisma bonus to damage with our Eldritch Blast, so we are going to be doing an amazing amount of additional damage. This also works with Booming Blade, so if we find ourselves making melee attacks, the Potent Robe is going to increase our Booming Blade damage even more than the already egregiously high damage that cantrip does. Other than that, we have a lot of options for how we want to gear the character. Increasing our charisma with stuff like the Birthright Hat is always very, very good, or increasing our save DCs and initiative with items like the Fistbreaker Helm, very important. Increased save DCs are great for this character, and remember we have shield proficiency, so I recommend Heatheric's Shield to increase our armor class. The harder we are to hit, the better, because we want to maintain concentration on our spells, so we do want to increase our armor class and use careful positioning in order to stay safe with this character. Potions of speed are also very valuable, or other sources of haste, because with hasted actions, even in honor mode, you can still use the full value of Eldritch Blast. It's not like weapon attacks where you only get one of them. So double Eldritch Blasting when you have Hex and Hexblade's Curse up, that's 6 beams, each of which adds 9, or with the Potent Robe, 14 damage. 6 times 14 plus the Eldritch Blast damage is an insane amount of damage to be able to do with a cantrip, so hasted actions are incredibly valuable for this character as well. For weapons for this character, we again have really great options and a lot of different directions that the character can go. My favorite of these is going to be Falar Alluve. This is a commander character, a party leader, and a Hexblade. So we can enchant Falar to both attack with it using our charisma and also gain tremendous value from either of its abilities. Singing to hit with our attacks more often makes our Eldritch Blasts better, and Shrieking, of course, increases the damage of our Eldritch Blasts. So even if this character doesn't carry Falar, you benefit so heavily from having it in your party that you should definitely have at least one character carry it. So could be this character, could be a different character, but this is a very powerful weapon that goes very, very well with this character. As a spellcaster, Marka Heshkir is also almost always the best in slot weapon to use. You won't be making as many melee weapon attacks with it as despite having the Hexblade ability, but it's still a +2 staff, so if you have to bonk something and Booming Blade it, you can. But obviously, Marka Heshkir just gives you short rest casts of 6th level spells like Chain Lightning. This character gets extra short rest, so Marka Heshkir is incredible for this character. Another weapon that is incredibly powerful for this character because of our Warlock ability to ignore darkness is Shar's Spear of Evening. I apologize for the jank here, because this is on the patch 8 beta client. The mods that I normally use to spawn in weapons don't work, so I've just got Saloon's Spear of Night here showing, playing the part of Char's Spear of Evening, but I'm going to pop up a window with the wiki entry for Char's Spear of Evening so that you can take a look at it. Sorry for having to do it this way, but you still get the idea here. Char's Spear of Evening, just an incredibly powerful weapon. The bonus casts of darkness are extremely strong for this character. And of course, as a Hexblade, we can enchant it to use our charisma. It's one of the best weapons in the game just to actually attack with. So this will go really well with this character for when you want to make melee attacks. Not going to be the primary strategy, but a very powerful weapon for this character. So very much worth mentioning. Other good weapons include weapons with passive effects, like the Knife of the Undermountain King that increases your critical hit chance, which is very good for your Eldritch Blasts, so very helpful there as well. We can also increase our crowd control options, because this build can use the Callous Glow Ring combined with the number of Eldritch Blast hits that we're doing, and radiating orb items like the Luminous Gloves. We also have medium armor proficiency, so we can wear the Luminous Armor as well. Since we're a Hexblade Warlock, we have medium armor proficiency, and in order to stack radiating orbs to disable enemies even with our normal attacks. Combine that with the Boots of Stormy Clamor to add reverberation, and you have a very potent crowd controller with your cantrips as well as with your bonus action casts, so you can lock down entire parties full of enemies. This character also has no inherent access to Misty Step, so you probably want an item like the Disintegrating Nightwalkers or the Amulet of Misty Step that gives you Misty Step. And then I also like the Wondrous Gloves, especially early. Extra casts of Bardic Inspiration give you a lot more casts of Mantle of Inspiration on your party members, which makes them even more survivable and very disruptive. Between Radiating Orb stacking with these effects or Mantle of Inspiration effects, as well as the command casts that you get from Mantle of Majesty, enemies just won't be doing anything when you have this character facing them down. So it is a really powerful combination for locking down enemies while dishing out constant excellent damage. Alright, my friends, I hope that you've enjoyed this look at the Glamour Commander. This character is super fun. I highly recommend it as a patch 8 build. It was the first build I tried, and I've been really loving it, so give it a try and see if you also enjoy it. And we will be back with more builds for patch 8. As the classes get more finalized, I'm going to do optimization guides to each of the new subclasses, so we'll do a guide to just how to build each of the subclasses, just as a basic build, as well as builds that are more focused on squeezing out every possible piece of power from the new abilities. But I feel like there's not a ton of point in doing that yet, while the abilities are still very much in flux and could change at any moment. Until the content is finalized, we don't want to try to optimize for edge cases. Instead, we're optimizing for impactful, powerful, and interesting characters, and this is definitely one of those. As always, if you have enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a comment and hit like. Helps me out a ton with the algorithm, so I appreciate you taking the time to do that. And you can subscribe to my channel for more Baldur's Gate 3 videos with patch 8 and other strategy game analysis. Cheers, my friends. I'll catch you next time.